good. How's the weather in Germany?
It's wonderful. We have weather really similar here to what it's like in Wisconsin. So for you and I, we know what that's like. And it's the fall is, I don't know about you, but summer and fall are by far my two favorite months of the year. And so the leaves are all over, the trails. It's gorgeous. Where I live in Germany, in Wiesbaden, it's considered wine country. Mm-hmm. It's in the Hessen and Rhineland area. And so you drive through all these vineyards, and it's just gorgeous. I mean, they're just, everything is just this beautiful orange and yellow, and it's very nice, crisp weather. So perfect for trail running, or any kind of running for that matter. Not too much rain yet. So that's really, really good. So yeah, it's beautiful here. Can't complain at all.
That's awesome. It sounds like you've been taking advantage of it with a lot of running. Is that correct?
Yeah. Had a big 50-mile run week this past week. So just got out there, and there was days where I was like, oh, I should probably go on the trainer, and then I was just like, no, I want to go run. I'm going to go run today. So, and it's funny because I have two Basset hounds, and my older one is almost a year and a half old, and he runs with me. And if you've ever been to Germany, the Germans are pretty okay with you running your dog off their leash as long as they're well behaved. So I run them off the leash in the woods with me, and the looks I get from people who see me, I'll be running along, and then 10, 20 feet behind me is this Basset hound.
Wow.
Coming around the corner with these big floppy ears and these little legs, and they're shocked when they're like, oh my God, they're like, wie alt, which is how old, and I tell them, and then, oh, how, wie lange, how long have you been going for? And you're like, oh, 10K, and no, not 10K, and I'm like, oh yeah, he's good, he's strong, and they're
Wow.
They're really shocked. And he doesn't know any better. He just runs. So
that's fun.
I love it. I should make a documentary about Murphy, the Basset hound who runs.
That is funny. Oh, that's really cool. It's nice to have. And how far? Like, what's his longest distance?
He's gone 7.5, almost 8 miles with me.
Wow. And you're and you're just cruising, or are you like throwing down the hammer a little bit?
Oh, there's times I'm like, yeah, I'll do like, pickups and stuff. But I mean, I'm out, I'm on the trails. I don't have him on the leash. So he is the master at fartleks, Mike. He will he smells something. He'll smell like a deer or a bunny or something. And he'll stop, and he'll go in there, and then I'll be calling his name. And then he'll sprint all the way to me, and then trot, and then take off again. And then, so he's like, he does mini fartleks the whole time.
That's fun.
So
love it.
But there's some horses on the trail, and I'm constantly so afraid that they're going to like kick him in the head or something like that, because he'll just get so close to him, and I'm like, no, don't. So, but he's awesome. He's wonderful.
That's cool. All right. So I thought today you could tell us a little bit about this part of your life when you were doing triathlons and then you decided to turn pro, and tell us maybe a little bit about what it was, the differences and the intensity of being a professional triathlete, and how that kind of took over your life. And then maybe we could wrap it up with sort of a, comparison as to where you have come through, how you've come through that, and where you are now in your life regarding training and what things are important now versus then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great topic. It's pretty cool to talk about now, because it has been a massive evolution that has taken a very long time to go from point A, point B to now I would consider this point C. Whereas, so for a lot of people that don't know, I was competing as an age group athlete. I was serving, I got out of college and went into, was commissioned as a second lieutenant into the Army. And so I was a logistics officer for 6.5, 7 years, active duty. And but I always competed. I raced cross country and track in college. And so, but I always had that, oh, I want to do triathlon someday. I saw it, the NBC coverage one time
Mm-hmm.
when I was in high school, and I was like, someday I'm gonna learn how to swim, because I didn't know how to swim.
Mm.
And someday I'm gonna get this bike, because the allure of doing an Ironman just always hung there. But as you and I both know, it just requires so much time, and obviously you need a bike, you need to be able to swim, all that stuff, and it's just not something that uh, a college student would be able to readily just go and do. So I wanted to, was starting to compete in it. Just knew that, like, as a runner, I had a massive, engine. I had a great background, but I wanted something more. I wanted to expand. Running was getting a little bit, kind of boring for me. I wanted to do more. So as I got into the Army, I was able to, hey, I can afford a bike, and bought a bike. And then I was, threw myself into the pool here and there, and just kind of flailed about, and was like, okay, as long as I can survive the swim, I'll be great. And so it was, I look at it now at people who have the ability to find coaches and go online and buy a program online or find a coach. I was in the era where we had once a month, Triathlete magazine had like the workout of the month, and I was just kind of going off the seat of my pants and just like, oh, I think I'll do this today. I think I'll do that today. So had absolutely very little direction. This is back in the early 2000s. And then,
I find that
but
interesting, excuse me, but it's like, I keep thinking about like what you just said regarding, because you see now it's like there is so much access to training plans and coaching and different things like that. So I think that if you look back in history, some of the faster pointy end professionals, they were kind of going at the similar paces and speeds and stuff like that. And I think a lot of that, the ability for age groupers to really increase their speed and get better times and things like that is really kind of grounded in the idea that information is so much more available and things like that.
oh, absolutely. I mean, and you just look at what the pioneers of the sport, what they were riding. I mean, they were riding these road bikes, steel. They didn't have the carbon fiber, titanium, any of that stuff. They didn't have the aero. They weren't in the wind tunnel, or they were eating like peanut butter sandwiches. And they just all everything from nutrition to having a physio or a massage therapist checking on them, all that stuff. I mean, today the science, and if you were to really, really, truly look at, and I'm not saying the professionals aren't incredible athletes, they are, but the if you look at the percentage and the how much better the professionals have gotten with all this technology, the ones like the Mark Allens,
Dave Scott.
Dave Scott, all the pioneers, the first ones coming up through the 80s, those guys, I mean, they're so incredible. Um, you're just like, it would be so awesome to see, okay, if we had a time travel, like, and could put those with the ones today to see how they would compete against each other. That would be really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So, with all things else being fair, like technology and stuff. So yeah, so I was trying to just figure it out. And I do remember at one point, reaching out to Heather Fior, because she had like started up with like, Paula Newby Frazier, multisports.com. And I was like, I'll get on I'll buy one of their like 3-month programs to get ready for, I did my first Ironman. I did in Ironman Switzerland, did it completely on the whim. My longest run was 10 miles. My longest bike was 3 hours, and my longest swim, I got into a pool in Germany because I was stationed in Germany at the time. I got into a pool and I was like, if I can swim for an hour straight, I'll be able to make the swim in Switzerland. So, no kidding. That was my
That was
training.
the test,
And
huh?
I did it. I finished. But I remember finishing, and oh my God, it was just one of those days where I was like, what the hell was I thinking?
Right?
Doing this to myself. And the night of the race, my husband was like, bringing me back, like scraping me off the floor, bring me back to the hotel room. And I'm like, oh, Jake, I don't think this sport's for me. And he's just like, it's okay. You did it. It's a bucket list. You did it. You finished, and I didn't even have a wetsuit, Mike. I had to, all of a sudden I get to Switzerland and everybody is getting in the water with these wetsuits on like the day before the race. And I'm like, what are those things? And someone's like, dude, have you felt the water? It's freezing cold. You need a wetsuit. And I'm like, what the hell's a wetsuit? And they're like, oh my God, get over here. So I had to go rent one for like $45 or so. I don't even remember what it was. And so I rent a wetsuit. And so my husband's bringing back the wetsuit the night I finished the race. And I'm passed out in the shower. He has to like wake me up, and I get up, and finally I go to bed, and I wake up the next morning at 7 a.m. and I look at him and I said, I'm going to sign up and do Ironman Wisconsin next year. And he's like, what the hell are you talking about? You were just saying how this isn't for you. I'm like, but I got to do it the right way now. And so I was still stationed in Wisconsin, in Germany, but I reached out to Heather Fuhrer, and I'm like, I'd like to buy a program. So I don't remember what it cost. I buy this program. I follow it sort of as best as I could. Mind you, we were in a war at the time. So we were just,
Wow.
the amount of training you could do and the intensity and all that, it just didn't add up. And they was completely heart rate zone training. There was no such thing as having a Watts computer or Zwift or any of that stuff. So I get my way. I get to Ironman Wisconsin, and I end up winning my age group.
Wow.
And so I was like, oh, sweet. So I'll fast
Sweet.
forward. I won't. I know. I won't bore you with the details of my age group years, but ended up moving back to the States and doing a couple more Ironman or a couple more, 70.3 races, and I ended up qualifying as an age grouper to the 2007 World Championships.
Mm-hmm.
And there I ended up, I believe I took second or third place. I podiumed in Kona.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, sweet. That's cool. Again, training the way I was training. I was full-time. I was a company commander in the military. I was a mom at that point too. And my husband had been doing tours to Iraq. So it was like, I'd wake up in the morning, get on the trainer at lunchtime at work. I'd go for a quick 30-minute run or something. And then, or go and swim. And then at night I'd get my daughter, I'd get Casey in the stroller, and I'd push her along for 45, 50-minute run, something like that. There was very little structure I had, or intensity wise, but I was just like, in all honesty, it was like training for me as an age grouper in those early days was the one thing that nobody could take away from me. The way we were at the military, my husband was deployed constantly. I couldn't control that. I was virtually a geographical single mom. I couldn't control that. The Army will take and take and take from you. They'll take your time. But I was like, no, I can wake up at 5 a.m. and get on my bike and get in a workout before my daughter wakes up. This is mine, So it turned into this is something that's mine that nobody else can take away from you. And it honestly, it takes on a life of its own at times. But I was having a blast, and it was keeping me healthy and sane. And, there's ways to definitely deal with stress. And that was my way of dealing with stress. So I ended up going, World Championships, and my husband was like, you realize you qualified to become a professional. And I'm like, I'm not a professional athlete. I'm at this point I was getting out of the Army. So
How
I
old
was
were you
like,
then?
I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I'm sorry, go ahead.
How old were you then?
I was 2007. I was like 30,
Okay.
30, 31 years old. So definitely, not this, got straight out of college and went into some of these people, they're going straight out of high school or college, and they're becoming pros. That wasn't the case for me at all. I was kind of considered, I was definitely a late professional. when I started my career. But I just was like, my husband's like, well, and I had qualified, and this was when the 70.3 championships was in Clearwater, Florida. So I went and I did that a month after I did Kona. They were exactly 4 weeks apart. And I said, well, if I do well there, maybe I'll consider the pro card thing. And I ended up doing well there. I podiumed. And I was like, God damn it. This isn't a fluke. So I honestly, we were moving from Fort Hood, Texas to Alabama. And my husband's like, listen, you've given your 20s to the Army. If you want, you can give your 30s to this profession. And I said, how do you make money at it? And he's like, I don't know, but let's imagine you don't make a penny and we just live on one income. And if you make some money, great, we'll invest it. We won't even depend on it. And I was like, okay, well, but I don't want to take anything from my family. So moved to Alabama. I kid you not. I sat down and I was like, okay, these are the races I'm going to do. This is what it's going to cost for me to go to these races. This is what it's going to cost for me to stay in a hotel, the flights, get into the race, the whole 9 yards. Okay, I factored it in and I was like, okay, for the year 2000, my first year as a pro was 2008. I said, I'm going to need $4,000. So I went back to waiting tables at Olive Garden. I worked, no, I'm not kidding you. I know I was retired from the military. I left as a company commander, left as a captain in the military. And now I'm serving soup, salad, and breadsticks at Olive Garden in Maylene, Alabaster, Alabama.
Taking home leftovers?
And, what?
Were you taking home leftovers?
Hell yeah.
Girl.
Oh my God, yes. Sneaking those breadsticks whenever I could. But no, I was kidding. I would wake up in the morning. I would bring my daughter because my daughter wouldn't go to daycare until 8 o'clock or whatever. So I would take her to the pool deck with me. And luckily the master swim coach was cool enough. He allowed my daughter to sit in, she was like 2.5, 3, she was like 2.5 years old. She sat in her stroller and would watch us swim for an hour and a half. And she'd eat her Fruit Loops and play with her doll or whatever she was doing. And she would just watch us. And she was so good. I would do my swim from 5 to 6:30, 7 o'clock. Then I would take her to daycare. And then I would quickly get on the trainer or do another workout. And then I would go work noon shift at Olive Garden Monday through Friday, and then pick her up and then get on the treadmill at night, once I'd played with her or whatever. And then that was my day over and over and over again until I made $4,000. So I worked from November through April to make enough to make $4,000 and saved every single penny. And then I quit. And then I remember one day I did the Mercedes Marathon. That was in February in Birmingham, Alabama. It was on a Sunday. And I think I ended up that year, I took third place at that race. And then that night I was on my feet serving people. Wow. And they're like, well, what would you do this morning? I'm like, oh, I ran a marathon. They're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I took third place. What? I made $500. What? So people I worked with were like, you're what? You're doing what? They didn't even know what triathlon was. And a lot of people don't know what triathlon was. But yeah, I was just and a lot of people were like, well, do you want to become a manager? And I'm like, oh no, I'm a professional athlete. And they're like, well, what do you mean you're a professional athlete? I'm like, you'll see. So, I mean, I had no idea what I was doing.
Were you getting coached?
No idea. What?
Were you getting
coached? Getting coached? Yes, I kind of was. I mean, I say kind of because the person that I met in Birmingham, he was a swim coach. And so he was like, yeah, I'll help you. Cause I was really hey, listen, I know how to run really, really well. I'm a pretty good runner and I can bike, I'm really strong on the bike, but I don't know how to swim. So I went to a master swim. I found a YMCA and I was like, you guys need to teach me how to swim. And there were several times that this person, throughout the 2 years I kind of worked with them, year and a half I worked with them, he was like, listen, I don't think you're cut out to be a triathlete. I really think you should be a duathlete. And I was like, yeah, but there's no money in duathlon. And he goes, yeah, because like I became I won the national championship, duathlon championship in 2010, I think, and I was doing really, really well at marathons. But I was always the last person out of the water as a pro female.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't have, no matter how much time you put in, you can't make up for all those years that some of these athletes were staring at the black line since they were 3, 4, 5 years old. And and that was really, really hard for me. That was a really tough time. And but I just kept plugging away because I was always like, well, I'll get him on the bike, I'll get him on the run. And that became my MO. Like I remember there was an article written about me, and it was like, she swims like a manatee, but she can bike like Lance and she can run like a deer. I'm like,
Oh yeah.
okay. Thanks, I think. But and so I definitely did get better at the swim, but I was never anybody that was going to be highly competitive, getting out with the front pack or or anything. It was always a struggle my entire career, but I never gave up, and I never said, well, I'm going to throw in the towel. I'm just going to be a duathlete. There's just no money in duathlon. There's no races in it, unfortunately. But I wanted to. I was like, no, I'm going to do triathlon. I'm going to do all three. This is what I decided to do. This is what I've got to finish with. So, my first year as a pro, I ended up taking third place at 2 Ironman at Wisconsin and Florida, and was really successful. And then my second year, I was like, oh, I need to race more. I need to race more. And I ended up getting people in my ears. This is where I started getting a couple sponsorships, and people were, you got to race more. You got to race more. You got to race more. You got to get exposure. And that year I did 5 Ironman.
Wow.
And I traveled all over the world. I traveled to Germany for one of them. I did Roth, which is an amazing challenge route, amazing race. But I ended up doing so many in one year that, and I just saw the decline in my performance, going down, down, down. And I was burnt. I was tired. I was so burnt out. And luckily I was not injured. Thank you, Jesus. But I remember, just not seeing the success that I saw my first year. And I was so tired. And I finally was talking to a friend of mine who he had done the pro gig for a number of years. And he was kind of leaving the pro ranks and going into his next chapter of his life as I was going into it. And he gave me a number to a guy, a coach. And he's like, you need to talk to him. This is a real triathlon coach. I don't necessarily, and I showed him what I was doing. He's like, I don't necessarily think what you're doing is working. And I really took what he said to heart. So I contacted this other coach and was like, this is who I am. What are you like? And we kind of interviewed each other, and I went with him, and I had great, great success with him. And I loved his style, and he was very much more science oriented, and he introduced me to power and a power meter. Because before then I was just kind of going off I was going off of not so much heart rate. I was never really a huge fan of heart rate because it is so arbitrary to many different conditions, but I was going off of rate of perceived exertion. And unfortunately for me, rate of perceived exertion is, well, if I'm going hard, I can go harder and I can go harder. And you and I both know that you actually get better when you take a rest. So, I work with this new coach, and we really gelled really, really well together. And, but again, I was was not with, this person lived in another state. I had to do everything by myself. I didn't have like the luxury of, some of these athletes who live in like Boulder, Colorado, and they all train together and they're a squad. And you'd hear about these squads that all would get together and train and go to camps and stuff. And I was just like, that lifestyle is not what I led. I mean, from when my daughter was in, either she was in daycare or she went to kindergarten, I was working out. That was my full-time job during the day. And then I had to be a mom. And I was also teaching to make some money. And I was also teaching like spin classes at Gold's Gym and the YMCA. And I was teaching, doing stuff to kind of make ends meet a little bit. Because I vowed I would never, ever, ever take money from what my husband was making to travel, to go to these races. So these like prize purses of $1,000 here, $2,000 there. It was like the first couple of years of my triathlon career, we were in the red. I didn't make money at all. I started to get noticed and I started to get some sponsorships, but sponsorships are very funny. You've got like 3 tiers. You get the product sponsors. You get the sponsors that are like, well, we'll give you money if you podium at this race, we'll give you a bonus. And then you get the tier 1 sponsors are the people who get a salary plus a bonus plus product.
Okay.
So in the first few years, like my first sponsorship was with Sports Beans. So yeah, like Jelly Belly. So I had all the jelly beans you could possibly want to eat in your lifetime in my garage, ready to eat. But let me tell you, that does not put food on the table. And I had goo and, I mean, I'm not trying to rip on these sponsorships, but that's I'm telling the people out there that it is, unless you're the 1%. And I'll be honest with you. Triathlon is, it's like real estate. You either are feasting or famine. And that's why I love Cody Beals, because he's very honest and he has shown, his receipts. It's great because it's true. We don't have at least I didn't have a professional triathlon union to be like, hey, race director, you guys need to pony up some money. These people are dying right now. And then, so I was starting to get really sick, as my career went on, as I was really able to work with a quote unquote real triathlon coach, somebody who actually went to school. He had his master's in this. He dedicated his life to being a triathlon coach. I ended up getting an agent who was able to work some deals with me. And then I got onto K-Swiss, and had some bike, sponsorships and stuff like that, where they were offering bonus money. Power Bar was one that was very good to me. That was when I started to get out of the red and I saw the black, and I was like, oh my God, I'm actually making money, and it was proud moments when I was able to like pay for my Jeep and buy that and not have to ask my, husband if we could take out a loan for it. I just bought it. And with that came some success. I had, I've got some triathlon 70.3 and full Ironman wins under my belt. But again, then the tides were turning, and that's when, just as my success was really turning a great corner, and I would say it was right around age 34, 35, 36, that's when Ironman came out with we're going to go to the points system for professionals. And it was, in order for you to make it to Kona, you have to have the most points, and the top 25 women with the most points in the world will go to Kona, and the top 40 men will go to Kona. And so what it turned into is you were chasing points all over the globe all year round. So
that sounds
I
like
mentioned
a
this
stressful situation.
Oh, it was horrible. Well, remember in 2008, I did 2009, I did 5 Ironmans.
Mm-hmm.
In 2012 or 13, I did 5 Ironmans. Really? And it was Ironman New Zealand in March, followed up by Ironman Australia in Melbourne 5 weeks later, followed up by an Ironman in Wisconsin, then an Ironman in Hawaii, then an Ironman in Florida.
Mm.
And it was, I was just absolutely smashed by the end of that year.
So,
it was.
No, but I kind of get where you're at right now. Like, so we're sort of reaching the end and the burnout a little bit. And since we had talked about covering your ABC strat.
Yeah, my C.
But like,
I'll go into that. Yeah.
No, but I was just going to say, because honestly, we had sort of decided to go around 30 minutes with these things, and we're kind of there. So I was thinking maybe we could save C. We could kind of get back into the end of your story here and get C in the next take, if that's
sure.
Cool. But I did have one question for you. I have a question. Like, as you turn pro, because I think a lot of age groupers are sort of curious about this. You know, you get to a race and then, you know, you sort of see a pro walking around and you're like, ooh, there's a pro, you know. And I wondered if you felt that, A. And also the second part of that question is like, because I've always been curious about, you know, like you'll go to like whatever the races I've been to, Wisconsin, Louisville back in the day, and I will get there early and I will see a, you know, small conglomeration of pros sort of leading their way down the steps ahead of everybody. And there's like, you know, 20 or, you know, 10, 20, whatever it is. And I'm just always curious about your relationships with other pros and what that is like. I mean, obviously my gut tells me it's probably a fairly friendly conversation, but you wonder, like, is there, you know what I mean? You're kind of out there on an island. And I always thought that was just so interesting to me. Is like, hey, all right, the pros are going out first and they're just going to go after it, man. It's like, you know, it's a different story than the big wave of age groupers that comes behind it. So I'm just kind of curious, like, how you felt as a pro and like what the interaction was like and how did you guys live? Like, did you always stay at places that people put you up at? And because I heard that's kind of a thing too. And so
you try if you could find a homestay. Yeah, it definitely saves money. I will tell you this. It's like I have met some amazing, wonderful human beings in the pro field who are so incredibly generous with their time, their advice, especially when you're coming up and you're brand new and you're green, you know, to the sport and you're intimidated and all that. And then I've met some not so nice people. You're just like, are you kidding me? You know, like I won't go. I will tell you the good stories. People who have a wealth of knowledge who are always willing to do anything for me, like a Belinda Granger, like, and she had she had such a lustrous career and she had so many, years of wins. And she was just so nice. So incredibly nice. I had a really tight relationship with Heather Golnick, and that went back to when I was an age grouper. And I was like, I saw her at a pool in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, while I was visiting my sister one time, and I saw her and I'm like, are you Heather Golnick? And I was just an age grouper. I was nobody. And she's like, yeah. And I go, oh my God, I love you. Oh, and she's like, oh my God, here, take my swim cap. You can have it. And it was just the nicest thing. And I, to this day, was like, you are the nicest person I ever met. And I loved her so much because she's a mother of 3. And so those are the people I was always attracted to. I was extremely close to those of us that were a little bit older as pros, and also the moms. So like Jessica Jones Myers, her and I have very similar stories. We're both pro females. We both served in the Army. We both had kids. I mean, it was just very like we both came into professionally at later say after we had served in the Army. And so I think it's like anything, you're going to be attracted to and surround yourself around people who are like-minded. It varied. And then you'd have some people who just thought, who are you? Or, you know, it is what it is, you know. I think when you're out there battling it out, it's really hard because you try to you all know you're going for the same thing. You all know you're trying to put food on the table. You're trying to win. You're trying to make your sponsors happy. You're trying to make people proud. But it's also, it's a job. And then once you cross the finish line, you congratulate each other,
right,
and you're happy for each other. And you're just like, oh my God, this person's so amazing. And there's times that you're just, especially in the beginning, I was in awe. I was like, oh my God, I am standing next to somebody who was at the Olympics, Joanna Zeiger. I was at a race with her a couple times, and I was standing literally right next to her. And I'm like, I'm standing next to an Olympian. Oh my God. You're just, I raced with Chrissy Wellington in Rough, and you almost feel, I'll be honest with you, the first couple of years, I was like, do I belong? Am I a poser? Is that word still used? But you do. You're like, should I really even be here? And I did. Like the first few races, I just said to myself, my number one goal is I don't want to be the last professional to finish. I don't want to be the last to finish. And I can say I never was. And so that is a really because you're just like, that means I do fit in. I am worthy. And then, and then you start becoming more successful and stuff. But, I think some pros take themselves really, really, really seriously. And I just laugh because I'm like, you do realize like 99% of the population has no idea who you are, right? Like you're not Tom Brady. You're not,
right.
You're really not important. And then there's other people who are just so unassuming and so lovely. And you're sitting next to them and you're like, wow, you're awesome. Like I'm so happy that you are the champion that you are, because you are such a great representative of our sport. And that's the kind of person those are the kind of people I always wanted to emulate. So that was that.
All right. Well, that's it.
Yeah. But I can't wait to tell you about part C.
I want to hear about it.
Ongoing journey.
And frankly, remind me to ask you the question of, you can maybe start off the next podcast with maybe one of your closest finishes and what that was like on the run with somebody right with you, maybe, and trying to
that would be great.
Finish it off. And because I'll never, I forgot what year it was, and I was in Chattanooga, and it was like literally a photo finish for Ironman, and I can't remember who those guys were, but it was just unbelievable watching that last. You're can you imagine like
racing that long and it being like that close? You're just like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, just like the chess match out on the run course and things like that. I want to kind of start maybe with something like that, because I'm sure you've been through it and it's got to be intense. Cool.
Oh, it is. Yeah, I'll definitely. Oh, yeah, I can definitely share 1-2 stories with you. It's but sure. We'll pick up next week. Same time, same place. Okay.
Same time. Well, maybe not same time. We'll figure out a time. But
okay.
Yeah, pretty much. All right. Well, it's been awesome as usual, my Wisconsin friend. And
all right.
You have a great, I guess, night over there.
Yes.
And I'm gonna try.
It's 7:00 here.
Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure, and I will talk to you again soon.
Okay. Thank you.